World Cup has a funny way of sneaking into places where it doesn't seem to belong. Every 4 years, the entire planet loses its mind over a game where 90 minutes can pass and absolutely nothing happens. That's not me being cynical. That's just math. I mean, there are games that end 0-0, and everyone walks away talking about what an incredible battle it was. If I paid to watch two guys box for 12 rounds and nobody threw a punch, I'd want my money back. So no, I haven't suddenly become a soccer fanatic. I'm still convinced there's more scoring at a Star Trek convention than there is in most professional soccer matches. That opinion hasn't changed, and I don't expect it to. But something else caught my attention this summer, and honestly, it surprised me. It wasn't what happened on the field. It was what happened off of it. The World Cup brought hundreds of thousands of visitors from every corner of the globe into America. They came here expecting one thing, and many of them left talking about something completely different. They didn't spend all their time discussing penalty kicks or midfield strategy. They spent an awful lot of time staring at grocery stores like they'd just discovered Atlantis. And I have to admit, watching that unfold has been one of the most unexpectedly entertaining things I've seen in a long time. Now, before anybody starts warming up their outrage muscles, yes, I understand America has problems. Believe me, I've built a career talking about them. If there were Olympic medals for pointing out what's broken in this country, I'd have enough gold to make Fort Knox jealous. I'm well aware of the statistics. Our infant mortality rate isn't where it should be. Women remain underrepresented in government. We struggle with overdose deaths. Millions still lack adequate health insurance. Those are real issues. They're serious. They deserve attention, rather. And I've spent years giving them exactly that. But here's the thing, the name of our country is America. It's not utopia. Somehow we've developed this bizarre habit of comparing reality to fantasy. Every conversation starts with an imaginary version of perfection that has never existed anywhere in human history. Then we look around and complain because the actual world doesn't measure up to the fictional one we invented 5 minutes earlier. That's not how comparisons work. You don't compare a real country to an imaginary paradise. You compare it to every other real country on Earth. America can't compete with a place that only exists inside someone's social media fantasy. It can only compete with actual nations that have actual governments, actual problems, actual taxes, actual traffic jams, and actual people arguing with each other over stupid things. We're not trying to be more perfect than your imagination. We're trying to do better than Belgium. No offense to Belgium. I'm sure they have lovely waffles, probably cleaner train stations, maybe even airports where your luggage shows up before retirement age. But every country has problems. Every single one. That's the part people conveniently forget whenever they start romanticizing somewhere else. Social media has convinced everyone that the rest of the world is basically one giant luxury resort while America is permanently on fire. Then the tourists actually arrive here, and suddenly the internet looks completely different. Over the last month, my social media feeds have been flooded with videos from visitors wandering around America with the kind of expression usually reserved for archaeologists discovering a lost civilization. They're looking at things that most Americans barely notice anymore: a supermarket, a parking lot, a barbecue restaurant, a Costco, a Walmart. You'd think they'd stumbled across alien technology. They're filming everything, narrating everything, reacting to everything, not with sarcasm, not with political commentary, just pure amazement. And honestly, it's refreshing because most Americans don't get to see America through fresh eyes anymore. We see headlines. We see influencers telling us that every normal activity is secretly destroying civilization. Apparently, mowing your lawn is violence now. Who knew? Somewhere there's probably a graduate student writing a dissertation explaining how using a leaf blower perpetuates colonialism. Meanwhile, regular people from halfway across the world are walking into a grocery store saying, "Wow." Not because somebody told them to, because they actually mean it. One of my favorite videos featured a Japanese tourist trying Texas barbecue. Now, Texans don't exactly need encouragement when it comes to barbecue. They already behave like they're protecting the nuclear launch codes every time someone mentions brisket. But watching this guy take his first bite was priceless. His entire face lit up. His eyes got wide. He looked like someone had just explained the meaning of life using smoked meat. Amazing, I love it. That was his reaction, completely genuine. No irony, no hesitation, just absolute joy. I couldn't help thinking the last time he looked that excited, he was probably rubbing himself against a stranger on the subway. That's the kind of enthusiasm we're talking about. Then there were the British tourists. Now, Britain gave us Shakespeare. They gave us the Beatles, they gave us parliamentary democracy, and somehow none of that prepared them for Costco. Watching British visitors walk through Costco has been like watching pilgrims enter a sacred temple. They're not shopping, they're witnessing. They push their carts slowly, turning their heads in every direction, trying to process the scale of what they're seeing, the towering shelves, the endless aisles, the industrial-sized containers of everything. You almost expect someone to whisper. One European visitor actually described Walmart as the greatest tourist attraction imaginable. Think about that. Not the Grand Canyon, not Yellowstone, not Times Square Walmart. He said it was like visiting a museum. A museum, that's one way to describe a place where you can buy windshield wiper fluid, birthday balloons, frozen shrimp, a fishing pole, and a garden gnome in the same trip. But that's exactly what fascinated him. The sheer abundance, the variety, the ridiculousness of it all. Americans don't even notice anymore. We walk into these stores thinking, I just need toothpaste. They're walking in like they're entering the Louvre. Then they discover the souvenir section. You can buy a ceramic beaver wearing sunglasses? Yes, you can. Why? Because America, sometimes that's the entire explanation. Not everything needs centuries of cultural significance. Sometimes somebody designs a ceramic beaver wearing sunglasses, another person approves it, and before you know it, it's sitting on a shelf waiting for tourists to wonder what chain of events led humanity to this exact moment. And honestly, I'm glad it exists because it makes people smile. Then they notice the mayonnaise, not a jar, not a bottle, a gallon. They're trying to understand why anyone would need that much mayonnaise. Americans don't ask questions like that. We assume whoever bought it probably has a plan or a family reunion or very ambitious potato salad. Then somebody sees the pizza, not just pizza, American pizza, the kind that arrives looking like it was designed by civil engineers. One tourist couldn't stop talking about the size. He kept repeating the weight, over 1 kilogram of pizza. He sounded genuinely overwhelmed, like he'd just encountered a food group that science hadn't classified yet. And I found myself thinking, wait until these people discover what eating that pizza every weekend eventually does. The slices get bigger eventually. So do we. That's America in one sentence. We supersize everything, including ourselves. And somehow people keep finding it absolutely fascinating. Watching their excitement has reminded me of something most of us forget. Sometimes you don't realize what you have until someone else experiences it for the very first time. If you really want to appreciate your own country, don't ask people who live there, ask the tourists. They haven't had years of cable news convincing them that civilization is collapsing because somebody used the wrong pronoun at a coffee shop or because a celebrity tweeted something stupid at 2 in the morning. They don't arrive carrying decades of political baggage. They just walk around with their eyes open, and what they've been seeing has been fascinating. One visitor summed up American food with complete sincerity. American food is insane. Now, depending on who says that, it could be an insult. Not this time. This guy had just eaten a hot dog, not filet mignon, not lobster, not some Michelin-starred tasting menu where they serve you a single carrot on a plate the size of a satellite dish and call it deconstructed harvest. A hot dog, he bit into it like he'd discovered buried treasure. Oh my God, he said. Why does the sausage taste so good? Well, it's probably the rat hair. I'm kidding, mostly. Whatever the secret is, we've somehow mastered the art of taking food that no nutritionist would ever recommend and making it taste so good that people immediately forget every promise they ever made about eating healthy. America has always been strangely talented at that. Give us something simple, and somehow we'll make it bigger, cheesier, crispier, and significantly worse for your cholesterol, but you'll smile while you're eating it. That's the deal. Watching these tourists react, I realized something that had never occurred to me before. There are thousands of people from countries we think of as wealthy, modern, and sophisticated who are discovering products here that they genuinely cannot imagine living without. Take ranch dressing. To Americans, ranch is practically a food group. We've been putting it on pizza, fries, wings, vegetables, sandwiches, and things that probably shouldn't have ranch anywhere near them for decades. It's become so ordinary that nobody even thinks about it anymore. Then along comes a tourist from Sweden. She tries ranch for the first time. And suddenly she's questioning everything she thought she knew about life. Why did nobody tell me ranch sauce is like crack? Now, I don't know what kind of crack they're selling in Sweden, but apparently it's disappointing. Because nobody in America has ever looked at a bag of narcotics and said, you know what this reminds me of? Hidden Valley. I've heard people compare chocolate to heaven. I've heard people compare bourbon to liquid gold. I've never once heard somebody say, this crack has incredible ranch notes. Still, the enthusiasm was impossible not to enjoy. It wasn't just about the dressing, it was about discovering something unexpectedly delightful. That's what traveling is supposed to be, finding little surprises you never anticipated. And there were plenty of those. One thing that really amused me was how stunned so many visitors were by the fact that they could watch soccer while drinking a beer. To Americans, that's barely worth mentioning. Of course, you can have a beer while watching a game. You can have nachos, pretzels, hot dogs, ice cream, enough calories to power a small village. Why wouldn't you? Then I remembered that in parts of Europe, they have actual concerns about alcohol at sporting events. Apparently, they worry that if people drink too much, they'll start beating each other senseless. Imagine that. A continent that Americans are constantly told has everything figured out, can't always trust adults to drink a beer during a soccer match without turning the stadium into medieval warfare. Yet, somehow we're supposed to believe they've solved civilization. Interesting, then there was another discovery that completely caught foreign visitors off guard. Air conditioning. Now, Americans complain about air conditioning. It's too cold, it's too expensive. Who turned the thermostat down? We treat it like an everyday appliance. Meanwhile, tourists from Europe walk into a properly air-conditioned building during July and react like they've entered the future. You can almost see the emotional transformation happen in real time. First comes confusion, then relief, then disbelief. Some of them look around as if they're expecting someone to explain the miracle. No explanation necessary. We simply reached the conclusion that maybe, just maybe, people shouldn't have to sweat indoors. Revolutionary concept. Every summer you see stories about Europeans trying to survive heat waves inside centuries-old stone buildings that were apparently designed by architects whose primary concern was resisting invading armies instead of maintaining a comfortable room temperature. Meanwhile, Americans are sitting in a living room that's 72 degrees, arguing over whether the blanket is too thick. We've become spoiled. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Comfort isn't a moral failure. It's one of civilization's better ideas. That's another thing these visitors kept reminding me. Sometimes Americans apologize for convenience like it's something embarrassing. Why? Convenience means somebody solved a problem. Somebody invented something useful. Somebody figured out how to make life a little easier. That's progress. Speaking of convenience, only in America could someone drive through a window to pick up dinner, then continue down the road and discover they can also drive through a church. Yes, a drive-through church. You don't even have to get out of your car. If that's too much effort, apparently salvation now comes with cup holders. And because this is America, where our commitment to convenience borders on performance art, somewhere else you can also buy sex toys without leaving your vehicle. Think about that for a second. You could theoretically purchase a dildo, drive 5 minutes, ask the Lord for forgiveness, and still never unbuckle your seatbelt. That's efficiency. Henry Ford would be proud or horrified. Probably both. The point is, America has always excelled at taking two ideas that absolutely do not belong together and finding a way to build a business around them. Sometimes that's ridiculous. Sometimes it's brilliant. Usually it's both. As I watched all these tourists documenting every surprising thing they encountered, I couldn't help noticing how different their America looked compared to the one constantly presented online. Their videos weren't full of panic. They weren't screaming that the country was collapsing. They weren't insisting everything was terrible. Instead, they kept saying the same thing in different ways. I didn't know it was like this. I can't believe this exists. I've never seen anything like it. That's valuable because perspective is valuable. When you live somewhere long enough, familiarity turns into blindness. You stop noticing what makes your home unique because you've seen it every day. It takes someone arriving from the outside to point at the ordinary and say, "Are you kidding me? This is incredible." Maybe they're right. Maybe we've spent so much time criticizing ourselves that we've forgotten to occasionally acknowledge what's actually working. Not because we're perfect, not because criticism should stop, but because reality usually contains more than one truth at the same time. America has flaws, big ones. It also has strengths that millions of visitors recognize almost immediately. Perhaps both things can be true. And judging by the reactions I've been watching all month, they absolutely are. The moment that stuck with me most didn't happen in a Walmart, it didn't happen inside Costco, it didn't happen over barbecue, hot dogs, ranch dressing, or pizza the size of a coffee table. It happened on a beach. A guy from Australia stood there looking around with the kind of expression people have when they realize a story they've been told their whole lives might not actually be true. He wasn't trying to make a political statement. He wasn't looking for attention. He was just talking. And what he said caught me completely off guard. I feel like I've been lied to my entire life about America. That's a hell of an opening sentence. Then he looked out at the water and continued. This beach is insane, just as good as Australian beaches. Now, coming from an Australian, that's saying something. Australians practically treat beaches the way Italians treat pasta. If they compliment yours, you've accomplished something. Then he said the part that really stuck with me. If you log on to the news, everything's bad. Everything's terrible. It's not. It's absolutely amazing. There it was, not a polished speech, not a carefully crafted slogan, just one guy admitting that reality didn't match the picture he'd been shown. I couldn't help laughing. Well, I thought, thank you for the perspective, Australian dude. Of course, I also figured there was a decent chance he'd stolen somebody's American girlfriend before recording that video. Let's be honest. Have you heard the accent? Americans don't stand a chance. But joking aside, that clip reminded me of something important. There's a difference between acknowledging problems and pretending that's all there is. Somewhere along the way, we've become addicted to the idea that if you compliment America, you're automatically ignoring its flaws. That's nonsense. Adults are capable of holding two thoughts in their heads at the same time. America has real problems. America also has remarkable strength. Those ideas don't cancel each other out. Take immigration. We've had endless political battles over it. We've argued about borders. We've argued about enforcement. We've argued about agencies like ICE. Those debates aren't going away anytime soon. But here's something that often gets lost in all the shouting, even with all that controversy. America still has more immigrants than the next 4 countries combined. Think about what that says. For all the criticism, for all the headlines, for all the people insisting America is some unbearable nightmare, millions of people still want to come here, not because they're confused, because they're making choices. People vote with their feet, and generation after generation, enormous numbers of them have chosen this country. It doesn't mean we're finished improving. It means there's already something worth coming for. The same goes for freedom. Do we argue about free speech? Constantly. Do we test its limits? Absolutely. But sometimes in ways that make everyone uncomfortable, but we still protect freedoms that many people around the world can only dream about. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, trial by jury. Those aren't small things. Those are pillars. And yes, sometimes our legal system produces results that leave everyone scratching their heads. Sometimes someone gets convicted, and suddenly there's a campaign asking a celebrity to help secure a pardon. Only in America could call a Kardashian become something that sounds almost plausible. Ridiculous. Absolutely. Uniquely American. Also, yes, then there's something else we rarely stop to appreciate. Water, not drinking water. Entertainment. Only America would look at water and decide it needed a starring role. Other countries are trying to make sure everyone has enough clean water to drink. We looked at fountains in the middle of the desert and thought, you know what, this needs choreography. Las Vegas exists because Americans looked at one of the driest places imaginable and said, let's build something spectacular anyway. It's insane, it's excessive, it's also undeniably impressive. That's part of the American personality. If something can simply exist, we'll probably try to make it bigger, brighter, louder, maybe synchronized to music. That's just who we are. Sometimes that creativity expresses itself in even stranger ways, like drive-through businesses. Agony. Only in America would somebody say, you know what's slowing people down? Walking. We've built drive-through pharmacies, drive-through coffee shops, drive-through banks, drive-through churches, and yes, drive-through stores selling sex toys. Think about the sequence. You could buy a dildo, drive across town, confess your sins, receive forgiveness, and still have enough time to make it home before dinner. If efficiency were an Olympic sport, we'd never lose. Of course, convenience isn't the only thing America has contributed. There's another area where the record speaks for itself. Innovation. People love talking about American failures. Far fewer spend time talking about American invention. Yet somehow this country continues producing ideas that reshape the world. We've built extraordinary research institutions. We've protected intellectual property in ways that encourage innovation. We've created companies that become global giants. We've built the world's largest economy. And yes, apparently we've become so wealthy we're now joking about trillionaires. That's the kind of sentence that only sounds normal because we're used to hearing it. Take a step back. $1 trillion. Human brains weren't designed to visualize numbers that large. It's almost fictional. Still, whether it's startups operating out of garages or laboratories making scientific breakthroughs, America has consistently rewarded people willing to build something new. Coincidence? Maybe I don't happen to think so. I think there's something deeply rooted in the American character that encourages experimentation. The willingness to fail, the willingness to try again. The belief that tomorrow can be different from today. History certainly suggests there's something to it. Look at the inventions associated with this country. The light bulb transformed the way human beings lived after sunset. The telephone collapsed distance. The airplane changed travel forever. Personal computers placed extraordinary computing power onto ordinary desks. The smartphone put that power into our pockets. Whether you love technology or complain about it every day, it's impossible to deny how profoundly these innovations reshape modern life. And then, because this is America, somewhere along the same timeline, somebody also decided the world desperately needed an extra large bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos. That's the beautiful contradiction. The same civilization capable of world-changing scientific breakthroughs also creates snacks that permanently stain your fingers fluorescent orange. High achievement, questionable nutrition, both proudly American. The truth is, America has always been a country of contradictions, profound and ridiculous, sophisticated and wonderfully absurd. One minute we're discussing Nobel Prize winners, the next we're arguing over which gas station has the best beef jerky. Somehow those things coexist. Speaking of Nobel Prizes, America has produced an astonishing number of them, that doesn't happen by accident. It comes from universities, researchers, entrepreneurs, engineers, doctors, scientists, and countless people spending years trying to answer difficult questions. That spirit matters. So does something else. Choice. One of the things I've always appreciated about this country is that people are generally free to believe whatever bizarre religion they choose. History is full of places where that wasn't true. Here, believe what you want, agree, disagree, debate, question, pray, don't pray. That's your business. And while you're exercising those freedoms, depending on which state you're standing in, you might also legally buy marijuana. Only America could produce a sentence like that with a completely straight face. Freedom of religion, legal weed, both part of the same national conversation. Then we turn on television and watch pop stars somehow juggling knives because apparently ordinary entertainment isn't entertaining enough anymore. That's America. We're ambitious, we're excessive, we're creative, we're occasionally ridiculous. We're often frustrating, and yes, sometimes we deserve every bit of criticism we receive. But that's not the whole picture. Never has been. Watching the world discover America through fresh eyes reminded me that perspective is a powerful thing. We spend so much time focusing on everything that's broken that we forget to notice everything that's quietly working. We forget how many people dream about coming here. We forget how much we've built. We forget how unusual many of our everyday conveniences really are. Most importantly, we forget that loving your country doesn't require pretending it's perfect. It simply requires recognizing it honestly. You can criticize America because you want it to improve. You can celebrate America because, despite all its imperfections, it has accomplished extraordinary things. Those two ideas are not enemies, partners. Maybe that's the lesson I took away from all those soccer fans wandering through supermarkets, standing in air-conditioned buildings with huge smiles on their faces, marveling at barbecue, ranch dressing, giant pizzas, and the wonderfully excessive weirdness that Americans stopped noticing years ago. Sometimes it takes a visitor to remind you what home looks like. Sometimes it takes hearing genuine amazement from someone who expected disappointment. And sometimes, just sometimes, it feels good to step back, laugh at ourselves, appreciate what we've built, and remember that this complicated, messy, loud, imperfect experiment called America is still capable of surprising the people who come to see it. So as the 4th of July rolls around, that's the thought I'm leaving you with. Celebrate if you want, complain if you need to. Do both if that's your style. That's one of the luxuries of living here. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the month, and I'll see you again soon.